turn around. And the second thing we see in this same verse, 69 and verse 12. 69 and verse 12. But I pray to you, O Lord, in the time of your favor. You see that? He says, God, I know you have a timetable. And it's certainly not mine. Have you found that out? Used to have a pastor's wife that said, God's as slow as a turtle, but he's never late. Have you found that to be true? The midnight hour, Sister Jane. At the midnight hour, all of a sudden God shows up. Boom! You get your suddenly at the midnight hour. And David says, okay, I'm going to calm myself down. I'm going to get worried. I'm not going to be stressed out. I'm not going to be afraid. First of all, I'm going to turn my eyes on God. I'm going to get my attention on Him. I'm going to begin to focus on Him. And secondly, I'm going to remind myself that God has a timetable and it's not mine. Because honestly, folks, if it were ours, we would skate all the way into heaven, wouldn't we? We would never have that right at the deadline stuff happening in our life. We have like 3 months of provision for what we ever needed. But God knows our frame. Third thing David did. David encourages himself in the Lord. He encourages himself in the Lord. David and his men were gone, and Ziklag is looted. His wife, his children are gone. They've been carried captive. As far as he and his men know, everything is lost. You can only imagine the scenarios that went through his mind of what happened, what's going on with his wife and his kids. They're gone. The place is burnt. The village is gone. Barbarians have come and taken everything away. On top of that, the Bible tells us that Abigail was a beautiful woman. Okay? Beautiful woman. And now she's been carried away by barbarians. Now, if you're David, you've got a lot of fear filling up in your heart. Has my wife been raped? Are my kids dead? Is my wife alive? And all the men who were with them, man, they came into this village, and at first they wept until the Bible says they could weep no more. And what follows that emotion usually is anger. And that anger that they felt now turns all towards David. And David, it says, was in great distress because the people are speaking of stoning him. Now, he's lost everything he's had. He doesn't know about his wife and kids. And on top of it, the guys that are supposed to be his buddies, the guys he's fought with, are now gathering around him with stones in their hands. And he's sitting down in the ashes of the village. Say, that's the bottom. Turn to your neighbor and say, that's the bottom. And David's down in the ashes, and he can do what they did. And honestly, those guys just reverted back to the same old pattern that they always had in their life, because the Bible says that these men that came to David were men who came who were discouraged, in distress. That's who came to him. And David got them up, going somewhere, doing something with their life, but now when calamity comes, they revert right back to distress, despondency. I'm a victim. It's somebody else's fault. Now, if you're David, wouldn't it just be easy to go, fine. Fine. I've tried to serve God. I'm doing His will. I bring these guys up. I teach them the right way. I sing psalms to the Lord. And this is what I get. I'm never going to recover from this. This is too big of a problem. Our marriage is too broken. Our finances are too ruined. My credit's too shot. Whatever you're facing, whatever you worry about, you can sit in that ash pit. And you can always find reasons why it's never going to change. And while he's sitting there, they're picking out good-sized rocks that they figure would do the job. But But David, this is the difference, guys. This is where it's crunch time. The Bible says this, but David encouraged himself in the Lord. I'm telling you, he didn't encourage himself by looking at his circumstances. Because there's nothing there to encourage you. But he's sitting in that ash pit. I know what he did. He begins to rehearse how great his God is. He begins to remember. Wait a minute. I remember when that lion came after the sheep. And I remember how the Lord helped me kill that lion with my bare hands. And then there was the bear. And remember Goliath? It seemed impossible. The whole army of God was afraid, shaking in their boots, and I was just a boy with a slingshot. But I trusted in God. He begins to remember. That's what you got to do. You got to quit thinking about today's problem and remember yesterday's deliverances. Yeah. Get off of that and turn your gaze upward and say, man, I remember when I didn't think I could make it through school. My dad told me when he went to Bible school, they believed God for postage stamps. They were so poor. You know what? It served him well all his life because as a preacher's kid, I heard that story so many times. You know why I kept hearing that story? Because my dad realized I've got to